and I'm the National Beverage Director for the WineStyles family of stores. Very excited to have everybody here tonight as part of our national virtual winery spotlight program. As many of you are aware, this is an extension or an enhancement of a program that we've been doing for a number of years, where we do the we do the spotlight tastings in store. Certainly given the current health environment, we did not deem it was prudent or deem it prudent to have 20, 30, 40 people packed into all of our store locations. But yet we want to continue to find a way to provide amazing education programming and access to some of our favorite wines to you. So I think this is the third or fourth month that we've done this virtually across all of our stores. We will continue to do this moving forward. We have a virtual event in September and October that we will be announcing very soon. But I do want to point out a few things. One, all of our stores are open for business. So please come in, visit them. When I say open, not only open for retail, but all of our locations are open for on-premise service. You can come sit down, have a glass of wine, cheese plates, charcuterie, small bites, et cetera, et cetera. We are very careful and making sure that we are following the national guidelines for social distancing, and all of our stores have enhanced their safety and sanitation procedures to keep you, our customers, safe, as well as our employees, which is very important to us as well. Second, we have added, all of our locations have added online purchasing. So for those of you that don't want to go out and venture out, you can go on to a store's location and online order. All of the stores' inventory is virtual. You can place your order, put it in the cart, and have it available for pickup or curbside delivery. I even know a few of the stores, like Mindy in Ankeny, is doing delivery if you like. Third and most importantly, all of the wines that we're tasting tonight, I always forget to say this, and Brian will text me and say, hey, oh, by the way, you might want to say this. All of the wines we're tasting tonight are available for purchase in each location. You can also use the form that you filled out, whether it's through Google or through Eventbrite, if you signed up, depending on the store, to order the wines that we tasted tonight. I know a few of them are in short supply, and they will go fast. And more importantly, the discount that we have for this event, the enhanced discount for all of our customers, I believe will expire on Monday. So if there are wines that you taste tonight that you love, I would definitely encourage you to fill that out and have the stores fulfill them. Before I do introduce our special guests that we have, I want to give a shout out to all of our store locations. I know we have Mindy and Paul Dayton from our Ankeny store. We have Alan and Gina Graham from Johnston, Brian, Andrea McGinnis, and Sarah from our West Des Moines location. We have Arthur from Montclair. Curtis and his manager are joining us from our Wisconsin location. Emily is joining us from Chicago. And we have our new owners, Ada and Nicole, joining us from Omaha, Nebraska. So a large collection of stores spread out across a huge geography that are joining us with their customers to share and partake in these amazing wines. Before I introduce our guests, one last thing, I do want to give our thanks to all of our loyal customers. Every single one of our stores is locally owned and operated. It is basically your support that has kept us viable through these challenging and very challenging times, but it's also your support just coming in and saying hi sometimes that has allowed us to maintain our sanity, which is equally important to us. So with no further ado, I do want to introduce our two special guests that we have. First, we have Susan McElroy. She is the Midwest regional manager for us here in the Midwest. She is our main point of contact for Goldschmidt Vineyards and helping us produce this. I met her a couple of years ago when she visited us in Des Moines. We've done one spotlight with them before, highlighting a few of these wines, but we were able to reach out and connect to her about doing this with Nick and having Nick virtual in all of our locations. So special thanks to her and her involvement in facilitating getting these wines into all of our locations, which is a whole nother challenge. And then also making sure that we had all of the things set up virtually with all the stores and the collateral that we need to make this happen. Next, we have Nick Goldschmidt from Goldschmidt Vineyards, the namesake of the reason why we're here, I would say. I was lucky enough to have Nick hosted in the Corville store here when they made their last rounds. I wasn't here, but I heard great rave reviews about his presentation. He's been involved in the wine world, I think, dating back to 1982, has made wine in 7, 8, 10 20 countries. I don't know the count anymore, but moved to Heidelberg, I believe, in 1990-ish. Joined Simi Vineyards, where he was an associate winemaker, became chief winemaker. They were bought by Constellation Brands and then transitioned to Bean. He's made wines for a number of different wineries, but then in the late 90s ventured out on his own and started Goldschmidt Vineyards, which I think is some of the amazing wines that we've had from a small vineyard, smaller namesake standpoint, have excelled across all of our locations. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nick. Nick's going to drive the show, talk about his passion for wine, talk about Goldschmidt Vineyards, where he makes wine, the wines. And then if you have questions, everybody is on mute, pop them in the group chat, and I will be sure to ask Nick the questions as we move along. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nick, and Nick can steer us through all of these amazing wines.
G'day guys, how are you? I'm Nick. I'm not from North Dakota. Many people think I'm from North Dakota because I've got an accent, but from New Zealand. I left New Zealand in 1982, as Jeff alluded to, and I went to Australia. Studied winemaking in Australia, came to California after Chile in 1990, and I was a corporate winemaker for 25 years. So LVMH, Constellation, Allied to Mac, Jim Beam, and I don't know, it's been a really fun ride. I mean, the corporations of the world really got me started. I mean, when I was 26, Louis Vuitton, who owns Simi, I don't know if you know this, but Louis Vuitton owns Moet Chandon, Veuve Clicquot, Hennessy, Cognacs, and Dom Perignon, and anyway, they own Simi as well, and so they made me the still wine blender for the US. So I was 26 years old. 28 years old. It was 1992, and I got to go to Cloudy Bay, New Zealand, Cape Mantel in Australia, Ruffino in Italy, Terrasses in Argentina, and Roses in Portugal, and put the blends together for what would be sold in the US. So through that, and after 2008, when Jim Beam was bought by Constellation, or the wine division was bought by Constellation, I got my job back. I decided to go out on my own. So today I still consult, and typically I would not be here in July. I would normally be in the Southern Hemisphere wrapping up or making blends, base blends for the vintage that we would have just finished. But here I am with you clowns. We're all stuck here tonight together. So Susan's already waving at me for being obnoxious. All right, so the first, please sing out. If I don't know the answer, I just make this stuff up. So that's how it goes. But I'm sitting right here in Healdsburg, which is a beautiful little town. We are open, believe it or not. Tasting rooms are outside, of course. Restaurants are open outside. Our bars are not open. But Healdsburg is an amazing town. We are on the junction of Alexander Valley to our north, Chalk Hill to the east, Russian River to the south, and obviously Dry Creek to the west. And I live in Dry Creek, but where I'm sitting right here now, I'm actually in the Russian River, believe it or not, which encompasses most of Healdsburg. What I'm going to do is my first degree is in engineering, my second degree is in organics and biodynamics, my third degree is in viticulture, my fourth degree is in enology. So I'm kind of I come from a long line of engineers, so I'm kind of a graphical kind of guy. If you ask me questions, I can draw some stuff, but what I'd like to do is share my screen now and just run through some videos and some photos of the vineyards. And I cannot see you right now, so hopefully you can see the screen. And these are the wines that we're going to be running through this evening. Not Dutton, I'm sorry. We're going to be doing Singing Tree. We will be talking about two wines from New Zealand, Chelsea and Katherine and Hilary, who are my daughters. And lastly, we'll look at a Forefather's Sauvignon Blanc. I think we've done the thank yous, but really want to thank Julie and Jeff and wonderful Susan for putting all this together, and obviously our distributors that really helped us out. These are the scores actually we just got yesterday from the Wine Enthusiast. For those who are interested, one of the wines, actually the Hilary you will taste tonight, actually just got a 93 from the Wine Spectator. These scores are from the Wine Enthusiast. And for those who are looking at scores, we can give you a whole ton of them, and Jeff can follow up with you later. But these are all the wines that you taste this evening all have some form of scores. Okay, the Chardonnay that we are discussing is we have two Chardonnays. One's we're not going to be talking about the Dutton tonight. We're going to be talking about the regular Chardonnay. And this is a picture of Sonoma County, and this is the center of the universe, Healdsburg, as I alluded to. The Singing Tree Chardonnay that we're going to be talking about tonight is from down here in the Sebastopol Hills, It's one of the coldest areas that we have in the Russian River, and it's on this amazing soil called a gold-rich sandy loam. This is the name of the wine.
These are the singing trees at our house.
So in November, December, the birds squawk like crazy. So instead of calling it the squawking tree, we called it the singing tree. That's where the name comes from. The key elements that I'm not going to go into too much detail because we've got a number of wines to show tonight, but the key elements that I mentioned already are the soil that it's on. So it's on a gold-rich sandy loam. Now in 1990, most of the vineyards of California replanted because of a little insect called phylloxera and wiped out the rootstock at the time called AXR1. So many of the vineyards were replanted. This vineyard was not. It's still on AXR1, and the reason why it survives is because of the sandy loam, and the phylloxera cannot live in it because there's not very much organic material. We also do not have any clones. Most of the Chardonnays that you drink today are clonal, meaning you can trace everything back to one plant. These things are field selections or mass selections. They were cuttings taken from across very famous vineyards in the day. In the winery, I'm a big Chablis fan, and the first time I went to Chablis, the winemaker walked up to a tank. I don't know if you guys know how Chablis is made, but walked up to the tank, poured me a glass of wine, and I asked him what sort of wood was in it. He kindly asked me to leave the winery because, of course, Chablis is made 100% in tank and receives no wood at all. It's all aged on lees. We do a little bit of malolactic, but it's not really important. And our wines are all vegan. All the wines that you taste this evening will be vegan. So this is the key element, the soil. The soil being this sandy loam. And if you go on my YouTube channel, I'll give you the address at the end of the discussion here. You can see me walk in the vineyard, and it's like talcum powder. This is a mass selection or field selection Chardonnay. You can tell because we've got big berries and small berries in the same cluster. And this is the age of the vine. I mean, we'll talk about old vine Zinfandel. Sometimes we talk about old vine Cabernet, but we very rarely talk about old vine Chardonnay. And what mass field selections give us? Smaller berries, smaller yields, better balance, and clones, which is what everyone's plants today, are selected because of their huge accumulators of sugar, and they produce larger yields. And so that's why most of the Chardonnay today tastes the same. And if I hear another Chardonnay described as white peach, I'm going to spit, because that's what they all taste like. So today, they generally range from stone fruit, which is, you know, peaches, nectarines, down to pip fruit, apples and pears. And we have a little bit of structure and a little bit of texture. I don't think you can see my face right now, can you? Emily, can you see my face? Okay, so when you drink this is the description of structure for me. When you drink a Chardonnay, it comes in the mouth like this. It's like drinking a Sauvignon Blanc. When we try a Sauvignon Blanc in a minute, it's lean and crisp and tight. And a wine that has texture comes in the mouth broad and finishes broad, and that's what we think of as Chardonnay. But we want to keep these things in balance, plus we want to make sure these things are fruity. So the singing tree that you're going to taste, or you are tasting right now, is got much broader range in fruit elements because it comes from this old field selection. So it has a lot of different flavors across the palate. And we get right up, it's called the C selection, S-E-E. So this is, if you look at the cursor that I'm looking at, pineapple would be sort of the Spring Mountain Rude. This is the C, this is the Wente, the Bateau, the Mount Eden, the Calera. We had names for all these old field selections. And so what we're tasting tonight is a style of wine that's a little bit more melon, a little subtropical, and quite different to what you'd regularly get.
Picking Chardonnay out here in the Russian River today. The guys are sorting through it. Beautiful old vineyard. We're just wrapping up here and should get this fruit into the vineyard at the winery in the next hour or so. It'll be fantastic. This is some of the best Chardonnay that we make, and you can see we've got big berries and small berries going in the same cluster, and this is what mass selection Chardonnay is all about. It's beautiful, beautiful fruit. Little melon and subtropical characters will come from this. Fantastic.
So yeah, quite different. I'm not going to go into malolactic tonight. Just trust me, there's a little bit of ML, but don't think that because the wine tastes buttery, it's got malolactic, that it's malolactic, and just because it has no butter does not mean it does not have ML. It's a rather confusing thing, so it's best to stay away from it. Anyway, today we're pouring the 2018 Singing Tree. It received 91 points, and it's normally 25 to 30 bucks. And you guys have, I don't know what the hell McGinnis is doing, but Christ, he's giving the shit away at $21.99. Anyway, this is cool. What's wrong, Susan? You don't like that? Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Susan's on mute. All right, let's jump into New Zealand. We got a couple of wines from New Zealand. Susan, yeah, go ahead. Got a question?
So I would caution everybody on the store pricing, because every store is different based on tax and shipping and that type of thing. So, you know, he's pulling out an average price when he's giving.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty close. I mean, like Susan said, since we have locations spread from Omaha all the way to Virginia with different importing or not importing, but shipping and state taxes, it varies a little bit. But needless to say, everybody's getting a pretty nice deal on the wine tonight. One question I did have before you move on, Nick, tasting order. Usually when we do a lot of the tastings, we don't necessarily put our Chardonnay before our Sauv Blanc, so sort of the thought behind that. And two, maybe related to that is, you know, this is what I would say distinctly not what we expect by way of a lot of California Chardonnays, or what maybe our consumer base has come to expect by way of California Chardonnays, and why and how this is different, and I think quite honestly pretty special.
Yeah, I like mixing things up. When it comes to order, I like mixing things up, and I could talk all night about which way to drink wines. One of the most common things that we talk about is, you know, we make Alexander Valley Cabernet and Oakville Cabernet. Which way, how do you drink over dinner? For me, I like to drink the Alexander Valley Cabernet with dinner, because, you know, Katherine, which we'll talk about tonight, and Forefathers, because those wines have a little bit more acidity, they're a little bit brighter, and so that makes your mouth thirsty or hungry. And then I drink my Napas after dinner with my cheese course, because they tend to have a little bit more sweetness and higher alcohol. Not that that's deliberate, but that's more of a traditional base. I think trying a Chardonnay first before the Sauvignon Blanc sort of warms up the palate. If we'd poured two more structured wines, meaning a little bit more CO2, a little bit more acidity, and then you go to the Chardonnay is sort of like a big fat blob of whatever in your mouth. Whereas I think if you wake your mouth up with the Chardonnay, because the Chardonnay is a complete mouth feel and sort of all encompasses the complete palate, whereas the Sauvignon Blanc's a little bit more one-dimensional. So it'll be, I don't know, I just thought we'd try it for a change and see what you guys think. If you don't like it, I'll do it with the next group.
I think that it shows the wine in its best light if you try it first, because the Sauv Blancs are so concentrated that to go backwards, you wouldn't get to get the good qualities out of this wine if it's after the Sauv Blancs.
All right, so this is a picture of New Zealand. For those, I hope you guys have all been to New Zealand. We were COVID-free until a few days ago, and then we've expanded again. But I'm from up here. I'm from an area called Mangawhai. Mangawhai is, I'm in Northland, so it takes about 3 hours to drive from Auckland to Mangawhai. Auckland is the biggest city. We have 2 million people in New Zealand. The whole country only has 4.8 million, although 1 million New Zealanders have applied to return home during COVID. So we'll see if they can fit them all in. The area that we're going to be talking about down here is Marlborough. Marlborough is made up of 3 appellations. This is the Wairau Valley, which is broken up into 3 areas. We have Dillon's Point, what we call the Wither Hills, which is the Brancott soils. These are the glacial soils. From the Wither Hills, a lot of glaciers came off and formed these river valleys, and this is what we call the Brancott. This area gives you more of the grapefruit and the citrus. And the Wairau and downtown Wairau, which is what we call Rapara, the Rapara soils are the stony soils. They give you more of the cut grass asparagus, which is what traditional New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc has been about. The Wairau River flows into Cloudy Bay, the Awatere River flows into Clifford Bay, and just to the south here we have an area called Ward. This is out of focus satellite photos. You can tell this is the vineyard that we're talking about. This is the Fitzroy Vineyard, and this is Highway 62. It's very easy. It's not very easy to get lost in Marlborough. We only have 4 roads. New Renwick Road, Middle Renwick Road, Old Renwick Road, and Rapara Road. So we have a lot of roads running north-south, but only 4 of them running east-west. So this is Rapara Road. And this is Cloudy Bay, this is Alan Scott, this is Paratai, which is Martua's top wine, and Stoneleigh, which I think Stoneleigh is probably one of the most underrated Sauvignon Blancs in New Zealand. And then we are right in here. And this area from Middle Renwick up Jackson's Road, this area here is called the Golden Mile. So we're in the real heart of the Marlborough region, which is fantastic. And you're the first people to see this. We put up a new sign last week. So this is it. We took all the sheep out, because normally we have sheep running in the vineyard at this time of the year, and we put this new sign in. So for those who venture down to Marlborough, you'll be able to like go scroll sign your name on my sign if you want. So quickly looking at Boulder Bank, the first wines, everything. Look at that beautiful green grass. Is that amazing? You would not see that in California. And this is the Richmond Range, which protect us from the rain from the north. And then we have the Wither Hills that protect us from the south. We have the Alps to the east. And I don't know if you know this, but the Alps in New Zealand are bigger than Switzerland and Austria put together. That's how big the mountains are. And we machine harvest everything because we do not have the ability to pick all of Marlborough in 10 days, which is what happens because Marlborough is 80% Sauvignon Blanc and every grape is ready at the same time. So mechanization was really developed in New Zealand and the way that we trellis. So this is we call it a vertical shoot position of ESP, and that's the way we machine. But we have the grass cover there for moisture because being in a cooler region, we get a lot of rainfall during the summer even. And so if we did not have grass in there, we would not be able to bring the machines in and we would not be able to harvest the vineyard. This is outside Fitzroy. They won't be able to do that this year because the sign is sitting right here. But so we pick into these large gondolas. We get into a 20-ton truck, and the truck goes immediately to the winery. We will have we can go from pick to tank in terms of juice in about 4 hours. In California, that would be absolutely impossible. There's no way we could do that. And the advantage, of course, is we can pick on time. We can pick with the inclement weather, and we can pick when it's super, super cold, so we don't get any astringency, which is often a factor when you think about California Sauvignon Blancs.
Here we are at the Fitzroy Vineyard, just driving down the road. This is the way we do it in New Zealand. We make our roads just wide enough for our rental cars to fit down. You can see we're not quite ready yet. A little bit of time to go. We've still got the waxy outside the Sauvignon Blanc. And so we're close to Verizon, but not.
I think that's pretty funny because in the large companies now, about every 10th row, they leave a slightly wider road so that the winemakers don't have to get out of their cars. They can drive down the road. It's pretty pathetic, but that's the way they do it. So this is the Fitzroy. It's named after my uncle. And on the label, you'll notice that I can't see myself on the screen. I think you guys can see me though. The flax, this is flax at the bottom. So Maori is a really important part of the culture of what New Zealand is. The Maori who are our native race. And when you're born in New Zealand, you're automatically part of a tribe. So I'm part of the Ngāti Whātua, which is a tribe from the north. And up there, the flax, which this is what they used to make their clothing out of, is very fine up there. So a New Zealander who looks at this will know that I'm from the far north. And the stones are obviously from the vineyard. And Boulder Bank is the name of the spit that comes off the top of the South Island. It's a very thin strip of land, and it's called the Boulder Bank. Two things that are really important here. Number one, we do not sell this to the British. The British want, well, firstly, look what the British eat. Any Brits in the audience? I hope not. So look at what they eat and look at what they drink. So they like green, grassy, asparagus-y stuff. But you know what? In the US, we like Mediterranean food. We like things with a bit more flesh and weight. And so we don't want to have that searing acidity. So we want to have Sauvignon Blanc that perks you up, but also makes you hungry. And I remember when I was making wine in Portugal, I mean, I've got hundreds of stories, but just a couple. This one is in Portugal. As I said, I'm young. I was 28 at the time, and you go to Portugal, and the reason why people are skinny in Portugal is not because the economy sucks. It's because the food is really hard to eat. They eat these things. Their barnacles are about this big. You're going to have 3 of them for a mouthful. It's 110 degrees out, and you're drinking port. Okay, this goes on for 3 days. And I said to the winemaker, man, can we get any white wine around here? He goes, no, we don't make white wine in Portugal. Young lady in the restaurant goes, don't worry, I'll take care of it. She brings me out a glass of wine. She fills it right. I don't even have a glass. Oh, here we go. She fills it up to the top like my mother, right? And the condensation's pouring off, and you go, shoot, what was that? You know, all the enamel on my teeth is gone. The roof of my mouth is gone because I didn't know what a Vino Verde was, but, you know, a green wine. And it's that sensation, you know, I have a total memory of that wine because even today I think, you know, was I hungry or was I thirsty? And so that's the sensation that I try to get into the Boulder Bank. When you drink this glass, when you drink the first glass, you go, damn, I want to have another one, or I want to have something to eat. And that's the key thing about good Sauvignon Blanc, I think. The second thing is it's single vineyard. And there are very, very few single vineyard Sauvignon Blancs. And what I think is because we're in one of the best sites, as I described in the Golden Mile, and we have 3 different blocks in there, we pick them all a little bit differently and treat them a little bit differently so we can get enough complexity from the one site. So that makes it interesting. So I've been making wine down there since 1986, because that was really when Marlborough didn't really start opening up until 1984, actually. So those are the 2 unique things about this wine. So I hope you like it. Oh, and don't you love screw caps? Beautiful.
G'day, I'm Nick Goldschmidt. I'm the winemaker for Forefather Sauvignon Blanc here in the Marlborough region in New Zealand. And we're standing out here prior to the 2018 vintage. And what's unique about this vineyard is we have much more water holder capacity here than a lot of other vineyards in Marlborough. We don't have a lot of stone, we have more soil, which means that we don't get as much dehydration, we don't have to irrigate as much, and hence we have a much darker, greener canopy. That also means we can push the ripeness a little bit further, so we get more texture, more weight, more flesh, which is much more interesting for the US palate. A little fuller and richer, so the wine comes in the mouth kind of like this and has this textural element. Not too green, not too grassy, but a little bit more passion fruit. Today we're out here, we're still about 10 days to 2 weeks away from veraison. The berries are still pretty solid, and we've got a little way to go yet. And we expect to be harvesting here in about 2 months, probably. But anyway, it looks like a great vintage. We've got beautiful blue skies. We're out here in beautiful Marlborough. Anyway, 2018 Forefather Sauvignon Blanc Waxeye Vineyard.
I always put that one up because, of course, Susan was the one that took that video because she came to New Zealand with me briefly. So so when I was making wine for, when I was working at LVMH and I had to go down to Cloudy Bay, I'm like, why am I going to Cloudy Bay to make Cabernet, Chardonnay, Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, and everything else? When you think Sauvignon Blanc, you think Marlborough. When you think Shiraz, for me, McLaren Vale in Australia, Uccle Valley, Malbec for in Argentina, and then Cabernet from California. So Forefathers means the premium appellation for that variety in the New World, or the Forefather appellation, if that makes sense. Again, single vineyard. This is before Layer Cake, Cupcake, and all the other cakes that came out, which are international wines as well. But this is single vineyard, single roll, single vintage. And on the label, you'll also see a pair of boots. This is my pair of boots that I used to wear when I walk around Simi. The faded out writing you can read on my website, but it's basically my constitution. When I became an American citizen, I decided to write a story about fish-friendly farming, organics, and biodynamics, and what it means to be a small farmer. And then I stole John Hancock's signature from the Constitution and changed it to my own. And Waxeye, I wish I'd put a slide up of the Waxeye, but a Waxeye is the name of a bird, and they eat nothing but grapes and they feed for 30 miles. They're a pain in the neck. So this is a memorial to every bird that I've shot. Whereas in California, we can't shoot birds. So these birds stay alive. These ones are a pain in the neck. So anyway, that's the story, but quite different. If you try the wine, we only sell this wine in the US. Again, but it's got a little bit more ripeness to it than what the Boulder Bank has. And so Boulder Bank for me is like a couple of notches off traditional, whereas the Forefather Sauvignon Blanc is quite a big difference. So the Waxeye is quite a unique property. Again, pretty small volume. We only do about 1,500 cases of Forefathers. All right, so making wines with your kids. This is always pretty interesting. Any questions, anyone?
Quick question, Nick. This is Jeff again. Obviously, with Marlborough being the namesake when it comes to New Zealand Sauv Blanc, but you have the 3 distinct valleys. Is there any push, or do you expect there to be more of a, sort of a valley designate sort of thing? Because the wines from the 3 separate valleys, or the 3 separate areas within Marlborough have a distinct flavor profile, I would say. Do you think that's coming down the way, or something that you will help, or no?
No, because Marlborough's only just become an appellation last year.
Okay.
We have a thing in the in New Zealand. The way we vote in New Zealand is completely different to the way you vote in the US. We have a thing called proportional representation. So any number of parties can run. There is not just 2 parties. And so you have to form coalitions. And it's the same thing when it comes to counties and boroughs and things like that too. So, man, to get an agreement that was actually the shape of Marlborough, it was a really big deal. That took 25, 30 years to get that even passed. So sub-appellator, man, I don't know. We as winemakers all know. I mean, Dillon's, Brancott, Rapara, and the Awatere. Those are the 4 regions, and the 4 are quite different. The 3rd main valley is Ward. We don't grow any grapes in Ward because there's no water. But yeah, I don't know. That would be a long way away, Jeff. That would be a big challenge, man.
No, I hear you. I mean, I just know having 4 or 5 different New Zealand Sauv Blancs in the store, and knowing all 4 or 5 have a New Zealand type profile, but yet their own unique taste profile, I would say, and having that information more readily available is always something that's great. But I hear the challenge associated with it. But yeah, to your point, obviously, even though they're from very similar areas, very, very distinct flavor profiles to the 2 Sauv Blancs tasted back to back.
Yeah. And I think the most confusing one is the area, you've heard of Central Otago. It's becoming more and more popular now for Pinot Noir.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking about major valley, and that's not easy. So it'll be more important down there for sure.
Yeah, and then if anybody does have questions, I do want to point out, like I said before, post them in the chat, and I'll be sure to chime in and ask the question on your behalf.
Yeah, no question.
It's an interactive exercise.
All right, let's jump into my daughters. So I have 5 kids, and on the labels, this is, so the year was, let's come off this for a second. It gets pretty boring looking at that. So the year was 2000, and I started in 1988, 1989, Pinochet was still in charge in Chile, and we were living in Chile. And I don't know if you've lived under a dictatorship before, but it's quite interesting the way they manipulate power. And one of the ways they manipulate power is restricting things. And so they would restrict oil, or they would restrict food, or they would restrict medical. But many times they would restrict electricity. And restricting electricity is pretty tough, especially when you're running a winery. So we learned to make wine without electricity sometimes. To add yeast to a tank, we'd have to light a fire just to get hot water. We'd have to hand crank. We'd have to bring out the old hand crank presses and crushers. And man, it was, anyway, so I was telling my children how to do this. They're like, yeah, right, Dad, whatever. So in 2000, we made a barrel of wine. We went out and I have 5 kids, we picked half a ton of grapes. We handy stemmed it, which takes a long time. The girls pigeaged, the boys punched down, then we basket pressed it, put it in a barrel, and I did stick it in a warehouse. And we make a wine called 5 Gold Hands Unplugged. And so we get to drink that barrel every year. Trust me, we can drink that pretty quickly. With 5 kids and 10 other hangers on, 1 barrel, 25 cases, it's quick. So the kids started wanting to do this with me. So Chelsea, well, the second thing that happened, the big eye-opener was for me, and you fathers, I know there's a lot of fathers in the audience tonight, but here's the worst thing as a father that can happen. You get a call from your wife. Honey, I'm too drunk. I can't go to the parent-teacher night at the school. Okay, this is not what a guy wants to hear, because it's a lose-lose-lose situation. You can't complain because the teacher will tell the headmaster, or call your wife or the headmaster. I mean, it's nothing. Nothing's going to end well. However, it ended up being a life-changing experience for me. They break the room up on firstborns, secondborns, thirdborns, twins, and lastborns. I don't put anything into star signs anymore. It's all to do with birth order. So I'm a firstborn in case, well, it's obvious, but making eye contact as a firstborn is not natural. So 14 firstborns sat down at the big boy table, and we didn't make eye contact. We didn't introduce ourselves, but there was a piece of paper in front of us all, and there was a bunch of questions, and all the firstborns, so we're so task orientated, it was incredible. So funny. So we all went through the questions, and at the bottom said, elect a spokesperson for the group. What does a firstborn do? I'm going to wait 20 seconds. If no one volunteers, I'll volunteer. I waited 20 seconds. I put my hand up at exactly the same time as the other 13 firstborns. I was shocked. I couldn't understand it. It was unbelievable. The secondborns are like, hey, can we get a firstborn over here? The thirdborns and the middle children are like, what was the question? They don't, you know what middle children are like, but they're all talking about themselves. They haven't had time to even get to the task. And the lastborns are like, we ordered a cheeseburger. We're not even sure why we're here. So I see this in my kids. So if you look at the label, you notice that the middle child faces the other direction. And you know what middle children are like. They think outside the box. They're the manipulators, the liars, the storytellers. And of course, they describe themselves as peacemakers. And you guys who know exactly what I'm talking about, anyone who's not a middle child will know. They are manipulators. Anyway, so when Chelsea was 2, I traced around her head and she coloured it in. That's where the label comes from. We just upgraded the labels so they're a little bit older now, and Katherine still faces the other direction. But she didn't notice until she was about 20 that she faced the other direction, even though she'd been fully involved, because it's all about Kate. All right, so let's jump into where the vineyards are. We're going to be talking about Chelsea first, and this is Chelsea. So this is the Alexandra Valley. That blue dot is where I'm sitting right now, and that red dot is where I live. So this is Dry Creek. This is Alexandra Valley. Chalk Hill is over here, and Russian River is to the south. The Russian River flows down here and takes a loop. This is Fitch Mountain, which is quite significant because it changed the direction of the river. And the appellation itself is like a Y. So you got this arm of the Y and this arm of the Y, an upside down Y. And Geyserville's in the middle, and this is not Overdale, this is Cloverdale. And we are usually, we like to be on this side of the valley because the sun comes in this direction. So these are east-facing slopes, and generally these are west-facing slopes. And most of the Alexandra Valley is planted west-facing, but west is hot. So these areas that we're planted on have 2 significant differences. Either really, really amazing soil, which we're going to talk about with Chelsea, or they're on a little knoll, which is what we'll talk about with Katherine and the Yoeman. These are my front yard. This is Kate, Hilary, Chelsea. Yes, we have 3 redheads. All right, 2018 is what you're tasting right now. This is, I think it's 18, right, Susan? Susan's on mute. We've just...
He can't see you. Yeah, we have the 2018.
Okay, so this has been in the market for about 2 months, I think. So it's a recent release. Guidestone Rise is the name of the vineyard. I've been working on this vineyard for about 25 years. It used to go to a very famous winery called Clos de Bois when it was famous. And it used to go into a wine called Milestone, which was their high-end red blend. Again, everything did I say this already? I don't think so. Everything I do is do 1 vineyard, 1 vintage, 1 variety, and that's also true. Every wine we're tasting tonight is exactly that, and they're all vegan as well. It gets it's 100%. It's traditional, blah blah blah. But the main difference is the soil. This one got a double gold in 96, or the 2017 did, and got a 92 actually from the Wine Spectator. The 2018 has not yet been rated.
G'day, Nick Goldschmidt here. I'm standing out here in the Chelsea Merlot Vineyard, Alexandra Valley, and we are about, I don't know, 70-80% through Veraison. If you can see down here, if I move a few clusters, leaves, I mean, you can see that we're colouring up quite nicely. A little way to go. This is the second week of September that we're looking about in terms of harvest, and that would be about right on average. So looking good. We love the soil here. A lot of good water holding capacity. We've got a long way to go in terms of holding this canopy on, but we're in really good shape and really excited about the 2019 Chelsea Goldschmidt Alexander Valley Merlot out here in the Alexander Valley.
Yes,
beautiful.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Goldschmidt, and after my workouts, I always crave a nice glass of Merlot. So, I'm obviously drinking my favorite Merlot, the Chelsea Goldschmidt. This one is 2017 from Alexander Valley. Reminds me of back home in Sonoma County while I'm here in isolation in the Bay Area. So let's see how it is. It's the perfect wine for isolation. Drink by yourself, or if you need a glass after spending the day with your family, it's always there. So let's see how it is. It smells like black cherry and pomegranate and chocolate. Yum. And it tastes like strawberries and plum. It's delicious. I hope you really enjoy it, and I hope it keeps you company in your quarantine. Stay safe, everyone. Cheers.
Yeah, so the key about this vineyard, just really quickly before we move on to Katherine, is just the soil. So the soil has really good water holding capacity, and so normally a Merlot berry weighs about 1.2 grams, a Cabernet berry weighs about 0.95. If you dehydrate a Merlot berry by 10%, all you're doing is concentrating sugar, acid, and tannin. So I want to keep the berry in full condition, so when we bring it into the winery, we can extract the hell out of it. So this is really a Cabernet drinker's Merlot. The second thing is that if you don't like spicy Cabernet, you're missing the whole point. Cabernet is supposed to be green and spicy. The greenest and most spicy variety is Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, and then Cabernet. If you don't like green and spicy, drink Merlot. Pomerol is not a complete waste of time. It's one of the most famous appellations. It's 100% Merlot. Petrus, Aubryon, they're all Merlot. There's more Merlot drunk in this world than Cabernet. But people, to make Cabernet drinkable, we have to pick it at high alcohol because most Americans don't like the green stuff. So it's not true. I think that you need to look, you know, Cabernet is awesome. I love it. I drink a lot of it. But, you know, there's times when I want to drink Merlot. I don't want to have to fight my palate, you know. I want to have just a nice, easy drink. And I think this Chelsea Merlot is just perfect. It's just round. And when I work with Chelsea, because she's firstborn, everything has to be perfect. And so that's what's involved. All right.
Hey, Nick, one question before you move on. Somebody asked a question about what it means to be vegan. I know a lot of wineries use egg whites in their fining, but maybe talk to that and speak to that a little bit.
So vegan is it's a really important term. Man, I could talk all day about all this stuff because my mind jumps to organics, but I don't want to talk about organics because I know you'll get upset. I'm a big believer in organics, but I don't believe in pyrethrins are organic. They're the world's most toxic insecticide, but because they're made from chrysanthemums, they're organic. They kill dogs and birds and cats and everything, but it's organic. Anyway, so vegan, the way vegan started was Greeks. The Greeks have got a lot to blame in the wine industry. Firstly, they invented a cork instead of a screw cap. If they'd invented a screw cap, we'd all be better off, but they invented a damn cork. The second thing they invented was the way to move wine around. They used to get these fish, they're called sturgeon. You guys probably heard of sturgeon these days. It's not such a rare fish anymore. But they would get the bladder, and the bladder of a sturgeon is actually really big, and they'd put the wine in the bladder, and then they'd transport it across the ocean. And then when the wine arrived, they realized the wine was better than when it left. Because the sturgeon's swim bladder, for some reason, was a natural fining agent. So that was the beginning. So people started chopping up sturgeon fish swim bladders and throwing them into the wine, and it clarified the wine. Then they found out that blood did the same thing, milk, eggs, gelatin, all these other animal products. And and very famous wineries who are right around me still use it. But I just think it's important that I add less and less things to wine. So also SO2, which is a preservative, SO2 sulfur dioxide, which is used in wine. People think it's bad for you. Well, you know, if you don't, dried apricots are like 1,000 times legal limit of SO2 and dried apricots than there are in wine, or raisins, or why is it that orange juice doesn't turn brown? Why doesn't apple juice turn brown? You know, there's a lot of things out there. You just got to be careful about it. And the other big thing right now is sustainability. New Zealand was the first country in the world to go sustainable. You can go on the New Zealand Wineries website. It's an 80-page document about how to be sustainable. Second place in the world to go sustainable is the northern part of Chile. Third place, Sonoma County. Napa is not sustainable. So again, and you can see it on the back of our labels. This is a sustainability symbol that you can see. I don't know, there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of regulations, but I'm a big fan of actually communicating more information to the consumer. And right now, we've got our hands tied and our ability to do that. So I'm pretty excited about the future of that, and I'm right into it. Let's ban Roundup, man. Let's get rid of Roundup. Does that answer your question, Jeff, or did I get off topic again?
No, you answered my question, and I knew you might spin off a little bit off topic, which is why we love having you.
All right, cool. All right, well then let's jump into some cabs. So we make Oakville and Napa. We make one wine from Napa Valley called Yardstick. The rest are from Oakville. Ultimatum is our top one, and tonight we're going to be talking about Hilary. And from the Alexander Valley, we're going to talk about Katherine, Forefathers, and Yoeman. So we're going to run through these pretty quickly. Just to show you, the Katherine Vineyard is this one down here. This is the valley. This is 128. Remember, if you remember that prior map that I showed, the Yoeman Vineyard comes from above the Katherine Vineyard. This shed doesn't exist anymore. This got burnt in the 2019 fire, but we already had our grapes off, so no problem. The key things, just this is in general, and I'll show you a quick video of it. I like the mid-slope. I don't want to be in the top of the hill because the soils are too thin. I don't like to be in the bottom of the hill because the soils are too heavy. I like east facing, as I said. Cane pruning is important to me, basically because I want to have more openness. I don't want to get into the difference between cane and spur pruning. That's time for another topic. We don't add any yeast. Everything is native. We don't.
Oh, did we lose him?
That's a shame. Would have run. Oh, bummer. Okay, so Katherine is from a really unique. When we talk about single vineyard wines, people ask, well, isn't it better to blend across different vineyards or blend across different varieties to make complexity? My answer is no, because in California, we can, I can pick up a stone and throw a stone, I'm in a different soil. And so when you take aerial views of vineyards, you can see vines that have big canopies and low crop, and small canopies and too much crop. And that's based on the soil. And so, yes, we have to farm the vineyards differently, but secondly, we have to pick the vineyards differently. And so Katherine has always been a vineyard that we picked 3 times. It's complicated now because there's 5 owners for the same property that was once one, but we still pick across the same. It's complicated. But the bigger canopy and the smaller crop, I just extract very gently because I know that those wines are going to become so big and so rich that if I extract the heck out of them, they're going to be too strong. Whereas an elegant vineyard, which has a smaller canopy and a little bit heavier crop, I pick a little bit later and I extract the heck out of it because I know it's always going to be more fruity than tannin. And so that's the secret of Katherine. It's 3 wines from the same vineyard, made separately all the way through. This is what site-specific winemaking is all about. And then at the end of 18 months, we come back and we make the final blend. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. But what's interesting is when I blend with Chelsea, when you drink the Chelsea Merlot, I know it's Chelsea because that wine comes in the mouth. It's very seamless and very easy, very round. When you drink Katherine, she's a second born. And when you blend with her, she wants everything to look like Chelsea. Everything's sweet, round, long. But right at the end, she always wants to add a little bit more density to the wine. So when I drink Katherine, I always get that punch of tannin right on the end, and that's her influence in terms of putting the blend together. So it's always quite interesting.
Nick Goldschmidt here. I am in the Katherine, Alexander Valley Vineyard. sometimes I pinch myself that I'm still making wine here after all this time. But really unique. I don't know if you can see in here. No, you can't. Up here, perhaps. So these clusters are super loose. We get nice, even ripening throughout. Just a beautiful vineyard. As you can see behind me, we're a couple of days away from harvest. The leaves are looking, you know, they're right there in terms of their water, and what keeps them in that condition obviously is the beautiful gravelly loam soil that we have here and the age of the vine. And I've been working on this vineyard since 1990. Amazing.
Yeah, so I think history of wines is working in vineyards is really important, because you know, I know how these wines are going to age in good years and bad years, etc. So yeah, Katherine's obviously one of our most successful wines, and I really appreciate you guys supporting us. And if you're looking for a wine to just go out and see what we're all about in Katherine's.
Nick, quick question about one, the video, and a little bit about the wines in general. One, it looked like there's maybe some irrigation vines or irrigation lines in that. So kind of talk about your ability to irrigate in California, and then two, sort of the oak profile of the red wines. Obviously, oak has some influence on all of the red wines, some more than others. So maybe speak to that as we go along.
Yeah, the oak is completely different wine by wine. We only use French oak. I don't use any American or Hungarian French oak. Anyway, I could talk all day about that. I don't want the coopers who make the barrels are really important. They have more influence over the tree than the tree does. So you got to be. So I choose to work with the same 3 coopers every year, because I know how they're going to react and work with particular wines. So I dial up and down the new oak depending on release, aging, and the style, because the oak does have an influence on the style. As far as irrigation goes, we have pretty limited amount of irrigation in California. But we do have to do it when we're talking about Cabernet, because Cabernet, you're talking about 140 days from flowering to harvest. It's not like Chardonnay or Merlot, where we're on a deeper soil. So Cabernet does require a little bit of irrigation, and we're going to talk about that in a second when we talk about Forefather's Cabernet right at the end. So let's hold that question and we'll talk about that. So quick look at Oakville. This is Highway 29. St. Helena is up here. You're heading south. This is Mondavi. That's Nickel. That's Opus. You turn left, and this is Oakville Cross. The driveway here into the back of Opus is the same driveway as Hilary. It's interesting that Hilary is always scored higher than Katherine, although when you put them side by side, I'm more of a Katherine fan than a Hilary fan, but what do I know? It's hard to beat Hilary because of the value. There's no Oakville Cabernet at that price point that you can buy anywhere else. Look at the vineyard.
Right there is the beautiful Nickel Winery and their vineyard, and that's Hilary down there at that end. And there's Opus, beautiful Opus, out here in the Oakville, getting ready to pick Hilary tomorrow. Cabernet Sauvignon, Oakville, Napa Valley. Here in the beautiful old vineyard in Oakville, this is the Charming Creek vineyard that we use for Hilary. Just a beautiful old vineyard. You can see we use permanent cover. We don't do any weed spraying. You can still see that the weeds are underneath all the vines. We do this because we have good water holder capacity, nice water penetration when it does rain, and also a buildup of organic matter. Just a beautiful old vineyard out here in the heart of Oakville, planted to the old trellis system that they used to use.
I mean, isn't it crazy, you know, when Kim Jong-un drops the nuclear bomb and you run to the bunker and somebody shows up with their 1 bottle of Opus or your 3 6-packs of Hilary, guess who they're going to get let in?
Well, so, you know what? That's a great question. I was going to ask you this question for context. For context, what's the retail value of a bottle of Opus or retail value of a bottle of Nickel and Nickel, your 2 neighbors?
Well, Nickel and Nickel is 200. That's the Stefano. That's 280 a bottle, and Opus is now 380 at Costco. So they're not supporting you, Jeff.
No, I hear you. We still have people that buy those, but I think it's great to have that context by way of who your neighbors are and the value that you're getting in this bottle versus some of the others.
I just, support your local neighborhood store, man. I mean, Costco is Costco, Total's Total, Walmart, Sam's Club. I mean, these are really big, powerful players, but without small, or in your case, mid-size retail, guys like me wouldn't have a route to market. I mean, it's the mid-size retailer that's been supporting me now for 30 years. I am not going to start selling my wine to Costco. Total Beverage in particular. I'll single them out because they're not doing anything for the industry, and they're not doing anything for supporting small family stores either. And they're politically, I mean, they're very strong politically, obviously, as well. So yeah, 93 points from the Wine Spectator and 90 points from the Wine Enthusiast. 93 points also from the tasting panel and also San Francisco. So it's had 393s and a 90. So it's a pretty good run for an Oakville Cabernet. And the press when it came out was pretty funny from the Wine Spectator because they had Bond $700, 400 cases. Bond blah 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 400 cases. I don't know, all the individual bonds, and then the Hilary was like stuck right in the middle. It's a pretty funny press release. Anyway, hope you get a chance to try it. Well, you got it tonight. So let's look at the last wine. So we make 6 wines at the top of my spectrum. They're all 200 to 300 cases each. A couple of them are 100 cases. This one is 300 cases. This is the biggie. This is the Forefathers. And we talked earlier quickly about irrigation. This vineyard is dry farmed. You will see an irrigation line in this video, but there is no water. So it's a really unique product because you get very, very small berries. It's also east facing. It's quite high. It's at 800 feet, which is quite unusual for the Alexander Valley. It's not like the Oakville Valley in Mendoza where we're at 6,000, but 800 feet is quite high. We're above the fog line, and it's black the day we crush it. So as soon as we crush the grapes, it's already the color that you're going to get in your glass. It's just the most penetratingly amazing, great. So anyway, here's a quick look at it. This is coming up the hill, east face, and looking down. That's Geyser Peak over there in the distance. And if the fog wasn't as high, what's happened, Jeff? You drank the whole bottle? If the fog wasn't as high, you would see Mount St. Helena there. This is the fog in the morning. So you can see that we're above this is a little later, but generally we're sitting above the fog line. So we catch up. We get off to a late start because it's colder up here. But then when the fog starts rolling in August, September, this vineyard catches up. See, the clusters are really loose, really open. And this is a dry farm berry, Jeff. So you can see it's about 0.9 grams. And that's an irrigated Cabernet berry at about 0.95 grams. So completely different skin to pulp ratio. So obviously this wine's going to be more intense than that. Sorry. I just have to do it again.
There are so many things I love about the Lone Tree Vineyard Alexander Valley Cabernet. I don't know where to begin. Anyway, I've done videos on this before, but just another beautiful day out here in the valley and looking at close to harvest. Today is September 14th. So the things that make this vineyard great are obviously the soil. It's a red soil, I don't know if you can tell, and it has these stones throughout it, but it has at the same time this water holding capacity, which is important for Cabernet. We do not irrigate this vineyard, even though we have a drip line. We ran out of water years ago, but you can see that the vines are still in pretty good condition. And then when you look at the vine, you'd say, you know what, it's pretty heavily cropped. Well, actually it's not. We have quite a few clusters, but the clusters are really small and really loose. Let's just look at one, for instance. So they're very loose. A lot of Cabernet clusters can be tighter than this. The other thing that's really cool is the size of the berry. That berry is probably about 0.8 grams. So most Cabernet is about 0.95 grams. That one's about 0.8. So a lot smaller, and you can imagine the skin to pulp ratio is much different. Now that berry is not ripe for a number of reasons. Number one, it's split in the back when I squeezed it, so there's not separation from the pulp and the skin yet, and you can also see that the seed is relatively green still in there. What else I like about it is just these vines are just naturally balanced, and even though it's dry farm, we can feel the leaf. The leaf to me still has good turgor in it, and it's still relatively cool. So even though we're in the morning here, we have a little way to go in the day, but these leaves are in really good condition. I'll be able to take this fruit through. I'm thinking this fruit right now is about 22 to 23 bricks, and I've just tested it, and I'll be taking it back to the lab to check it formally rather than just using my palate. Anyway, another beautiful day out here in the Alexander Valley, northernmost vineyard that I have. We're up here at 800 feet, and just an awesome vineyard, the Lone Tree Cabernet Vineyard in the Alexander Valley.
So I just want to wrap up. This is the way to get a hold of me. The easiest way to see a lot of these things is on YouTube. So if you go to the Goldschmidt Vineyards YouTube, there's probably, and you can click on the education sites, there's about 20 charts, and then there's, I don't know, there's a couple of 100 videos on each of the vineyards if you got nothing to do at night one day. The other big thing, the other one I post on all the time is Instagram. Doesn't matter which country I'm in, I usually post at least once a day on Instagram, and that'll feed onto the Facebook as well. And if you want to come out, we have a tasting room, as I said, it's called the Pour House. It's out in Dry Creek, and it's only been open for 2 weeks now. These are wines that you're not going to be able to get with Jeff. So we don't want to compete with what's out in the market. We have a lot of our single vineyard jobs, like really, really small wines. So yeah, that's my phone number and my email address. Please take advantage of us. And I really appreciate you guys stepping by and having a few wines with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Nick, Susan, we appreciate it. I know one of the comments, I think you already answered it. Arthur in Montclair was asking specifically about where the tasting room is. We have a lot of our club members and customers that travel quite frequently to California and want to come see you. So we try to help arrange, I wouldn't say VIP tasting, but definitely sort of an enhanced experience. So we will share that information with all of our stores. Definitely want to remind everybody that all the wines that we have that we tasted tonight are available in all of our locations. There might be a few stores that didn't participate tonight but might see this on Facebook. If they want the wines, we can definitely coordinate with some of those stores. And then I do know one of our stores, because of some of the weather issues, had to delay their tasting a little bit. So appreciate everything. If you have any last questions, post them now or forever hold your peace. We had some amazing positive feedback among all the wines. One of the comments that I will have or share is I'm a big believer of multiple glasses when you're tasting. Sort of setting aside sort of 3 or 4 glasses so I can taste the 3 cabs forward, backwards, and then going back again, which is a really fun exercise to have. One thing I do want to point out that we'll be doing very soon across many of our stores, not only are we doing our virtual spotlight tasting in September and October, in September we'll actually be doing a Riedel glass tasting. So look forward to that very soon. It is an amazing interactive experience with Doug Reed, who is our rep for Riedel. He does quite an amazing experience. You've not had proper glass, varietally specific glass education. It kind of will show and highlight how a wine can differ from a Chard glass to a Pinot glass to a Cab glass. Believe it or not, Nick might be shaking his head yes or no, maybe, who knows. But it's something that I was not a huge believer of until I did the class. So look forward to that as well. Thanks everybody for joining us this evening. Please, 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 stop in to your local WineStyles, visit them, come in for retail, come in for sit down, have a glass of wine. Look forward to more educational events as we move forward. Nick and Susan, as always, appreciate all of the wonderful help and all of the wonderful information. So with that, I will bid adieu to everybody and wish you well on your Wednesday night wine endeavors.
Jeff, you're a rock star. Thanks very much, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.